A stomach rumbled and the sound echoed across the valley. David's men were starving. They'd been holed up in their mountain hideout for months now, with Saul's men to the east ready to chop them into little pieces, and the Philistines to the west ready to chop them into even littler pieces. "Why don't we see if the locals can spare us some grub?" suggested David's beautiful new girlfriend. "Good idea," said David. "I think they owe us a favour or two, don't you?" David's General Joab arrived at the big local farm where the farmer was up in the watchtower slurping from an enormous bottle. "What do you want?" he bawled. "I'm from David's army," called Joab. "I was wondering if you could spare us some food." "David? Who's David when he's at home?" yelled the farmer. "He's the bloke who's kept the Philistines off your back for the last 6 months." "Oh, you mean that religious nutter?" snorted the farmer. "The sooner the Philistines get that fanatic, the better, I say. Now clear off before I show you how we deal with terrorists round here." "Religious nutter?" exploded David. "I'll show him who's a religious nutter. I'll burn down his farm and everyone in it. Come on, men." They arrived at the farm and the big gates swung open. "OK," said David. "How do you deal with terrorists round here?" At that moment, the most gorgeous woman he'd ever seen stepped into the gateway, dropped to her knees and looked up at him with big watery eyes. "My lord," she pleaded, "forgive my husband his stupidity. Take my cattle, take my corn, cast your eyes over all that I have and take anything you want, but spare our lives, I beseech you." At that moment, the farmer came lurching out of his watchtower, slurping at his bottle, and he saw his wife wrapped round David's legs. "Abigail," he said, "what are you doing with him? How could you?" And he gave a little gurgle, clutched at his heart, and then toppled to the ground. Boof! "He's dead," said Joab. "Oh, what a nice man," said David. "Save me the bother of killing him." "I think we should move out of here," said Joab. "I don't fancy being pitchforked by 200 irate farmers." "No, neither do I," said David. "We need to find somewhere safe, don't we? Somewhere where Saul wouldn't possibly dream of looking for us." And then a grin began to spread all over his face. "I think I've got rather an interesting idea," he said. "Come on." "What about me, master?" begged Abigail. David gave her the kind of look which he used to give his fans when he was singing those slow, moody ballads. "What do you think, darling?" he said. And they rode off together into the west. It was midday in the sleepy town of Gath, and the Philistines couldn't believe their eyes. Riding up their high street was a band of Israelites, and at their head, flanked by 2 beautiful women, was the legendary bandit David. He rode straight up to the local sheriff, swung himself off his saddle, and held out his hand. "I've come to work for you," he said. The 2 men disappeared into the local saloon. And when they came back, the deal had been fixed. What a deal it was. The Philistines would protect David's gang from Saul, and in return, David would work out of the Philistine town of Ziklag, attacking the Israelites. "You're crazy," said Joab. "You can't murder your own people." "No worries," said David. "The Philistines won't have a clue who we've killed. We'll keep our heads low here for a few months, knock off a few of the locals to keep the Philistines happy, then wait for Saul to mess things up." "How do you know he will?" said Joab. "Because I know Saul," came the reply. "Great God of the tribes of Israel," called Saul, "send us a sign. The Philistines are swarming below like a great plague of swarmy things. Show me how to defeat them." There was absolute silence. Saul's commanders started biting their fingernails. They'd been under intense bombardment for 3 days now. If only Samuel was still alive, he'd have known what to do. "Bring me a fortune teller," said Saul. "Someone who can see into the future." "I'm terribly sorry, Your Majesty," said the stupid captain, "but I'm afraid all the fortune tellers have been bumped off." "By you, Your Majesty. You said you didn't approve of superstition." I know, snapped Saul. "I was just testing you." All right. You can all go now. and his commanders trooped off, looking like they fancied early retirement. But when the stupid captain was about to go, Saul grabbed him by the arm. "Are you sure there's no one left in the old fortune-telling line?" he whispered. "No mediums, no psychics, no one just the teensy-weensiest bit spiritualist?" "No, sir," said the stupid captain. "I'm afraid not. Absolutely not. One left in the entire country. Except the Witch of Endor. And you'd have to be bonkers to ask her." Witch of Endor! Witch of Endor! Early next morning, Saul found himself struggling down a tiny, dark, spooky, unfamiliar path. Moths and bats kept brushing his face and getting tangled up in his hair. "Come on, you daft old hag," he hissed. "Where are you?" "I'm here," said a voice. "Ah!" He found himself staring at a wild-eyed old woman in a watery cavern. "Old witch," he said, "I want you to summon a spirit from the dead." "Nay," she said, "King Saul has forbidden it." I know, but the thing is, I am King Saul, and yes, you're right, I have forbidden it, except in emergencies. And the thing is, this is an emergency. And he slipped her a gold coin. "You are trying to trick me, you cunning devil." No, I'm not. Honestly, truly, really, I'm not. I swear by the God of the Israelites that if you help me, no harm will come to you, and I promise I won't tell anyone. Cross my heart and hope to die. "Who is it you wish to see?" said the old woman suspiciously. "His name is Samuel." "Aha! Samuel!" said the old woman, and immediately the water started to shimmer, and out of it rose the old holy man, looking like a ghost who'd just been woken up and wished he hadn't. "What do you want? What do you want? What do you want?" he snapped. "Help," asked Saul. "Well, you won't get it from me because you never obeyed me, and you won't get it from the God of the Israelites because you never obeyed him either." "Then what am I going to do?" wailed Saul. "I don't know. Nothing. You'll be dead by tonight. See you later." And the old ghost disappeared. Saul grovelled in the mud and cried and tore his hair. "Don't do that," said the witch. "You'll tire yourself out. You'll need all your strength. You've got a hard last day ahead of you." "What's the point?" moaned Saul. "I might as well die right now." "Oh, thank you very much," said the witch. "I'll do all this witching for you, just like you said, and now you're going to die on me. Come on, have a cup of soup." "I don't want a cup of soup." "It's golden vegetable." "All right," said Saul, and he opened his mouth just a little bit. The Philistine commander-in-chief smiled as his last chariots moved into place. His communications were up and running, his data link was established, his logistic build-up was now complete. At last he was ready to move. Then a look of irritation flashed across his face. Who was that disreputable-looking bunch in the Gath regiment? They didn't look like Philistines. Good God of thunder, they were Israelites. "Get them out of here pronto," he roared. "It's all right, sir," explained the sheriff of Gath. "They're on our side. They've been working for me out of Ziklag for the last 16 months, actually." "Well, I don't want them in my army," roared the commander-in-chief. "Send the blighters back where they came from." "We could stay in the rear," suggested David. "No, thank you. I don't want a bunch of Israelites hovering around in the rear of my army. Go on, push off," he roared. And slowly, his army moved forward. When David got back to Ziklag, the whole town was a burnt-out shell. Israelite bodies lay all over the streets. The women and children had disappeared. Even his 2 girlfriends were missing. Joab plucked an arrow from a corpse. "Amalekite raiders," he said. "They'll be miles away by now." The guerrillas looked at David with something like hate in their eyes. Their families were probably slaves by now. What a lousy mess he'd got them into. He thought he was so great, but when it came down to it, he was as useless as Saul. "Pull yourselves together," snapped David. "I want our 600 fittest men. We're going to rescue your families, and we're going to string up the Amalekites. But it'll mean the fastest route march you've ever been on in your lives. So move!" David pushed his men till they were totally knackered. Then he pushed them some more. On the second day, 200 of them were so wiped out they had to stop, so David left them behind. On day 3, he found a young slave boy who'd escaped from the Amalekites. "Will you lead us to them?" David asked. "You better believe it," said the boy, and his eyes shone with revenge. The Amalekite camp didn't look much, but it was brim full of stolen booty, in the tents, in the goat pens, everywhere. They hadn't even bothered to put any guards out. Then the guerrillas struck. The Amalekites didn't even have time to draw their swords. It was a perfectly executed operation. Every Israelite was saved. Not one Amalekite got away. David got his girlfriends back, and there was all this captured loot. "Ha ha!" crowed Joab. "Tough luck on the 200 wimps." "No, give them their share," said David. "They did their best. And while you're at it, save half of that loot for the local tribe chiefs. A little bit of bribery wouldn't go amiss. And if things turn out the way I plan, I'm going to need everyone I can get on my side from now on. It looks as though the days of waiting are finally over, Joab." Meanwhile, the Philistines were moving across the plain, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Saul's youngest son was run through by a Philistine spear. His second son was hacked to pieces on a suicide mission. Until finally, Jonathan, the pride of the Israelite army, Saul's favourite son, David's best mate, led his men in a heroic last stand. But what chance did he have against Philistine technology? Soon he was dead, his body crushed under an iron chariot. Then Saul knew the battle was lost, and it was time to die. He turned to his captain. "Kill me," he said. "Don't leave me to the gloating Philistine pack." The captain slowly shook his head. "I'm awfully sorry, Your Majesty," he said, "but I couldn't possibly kill a king who'd been chosen by our God. David says we mustn't." Saul gave a bitter laugh. Then he drew his sword, and he fell on it with a lonely sigh. There was silence. Then, "I really am terribly sorry, Your Majesty," said the captain, and tears poured down his face. Then his hand moved towards his sword hilt. The Philistine army came over the hill, reveling in their victory. Ahead of them, Saul's banner was fluttering. As soon as they'd captured him, they could hang his body up on the battlements for all to see. Then they stopped. The Israelite king lay ahead of them, lifeless, and at his feet was the dead captain.